Good morning, everybody. I'm grateful to be here. Thank you, James. Thanks to your colleagues. And on behalf of California Forward and all of our partners in the California Economic Summit, we're glad to be part of your journey, and we're grateful to be working with you. We're going to hear some stories this morning about your response to the fire as part of this journey of capturing those lessons learned so that you can be better prepared. You know, if you think back, the things you did in those first few hours, maybe the first few days, you did because of what you had done before, because of plans, because of preparation, because of experiences, because of relationships you had and trust you had built, and because of a legacy in Sonoma County around stewardship and cooperation, whether you recognize it and whether you call it that. And what I find particularly exciting isn't just to look back at the lessons learned during this recovery and figure out how to be better prepared for the next disaster, which we all know in California is going to hit us eventually. It's about trying to figure out how to capture that sense of urgency, that adrenaline-filled sense of urgency, that over-the-top generous spirit of cooperation, and that realization that you are all in this together and that tomorrow isn't guaranteed, and distill that, incorporate it into everyday life in Sonoma County. To take the extraordinary and put it into the ordinary so that you can get done what you want to do beyond this recovery. Now, I'm going to just set a little bit of context, and then we're going to hear these stories from, as James said, representatives of the different sectors. And I want to just lay a framework for this idea of collective action. And one of the primary ones is that it does require cooperation, communication, and if we do it right, collaboration between all three of the primary sectors, between the public sector, the private sector, and the civic sector. And there's many reasons why this is true, but let me just touch on three that I think are kind of common denominators that you'll all understand. The first is that each one of these sectors, as diverse as they are within them, have distinct contributions to make. They have different resources, they have different capacities, they've got different abilities to perform and to deliver. They have different authorities, both formal and informal, and we need them all. To do what you want to do, you can't do it with one of the silos alone. They all have to be working, and they have to be working together. A second is that they are mutually dependent. Some of us have spent a lot of our lives in the public sector, don't have to remind ourselves that wealth comes from the private sector. The resources from the private sector, through taxes and through philanthropy, fuel what we do in the public and civic sectors. We need them. In turn, the good work of the public sector and the civic sector creates those conditions, including quality of life and equality of opportunity, that encourage and allow for additional private investment so that we can get into that virtuous cycle of investment and higher returns on that investment. And the third is that if we want wealth to grow over time, that means we have to improve productivity, which we do through innovation. Now, we oftentimes think of innovation only happening in the private sector, and oftentimes the private sector leads. But what we need is productivity gains and innovation in the public sector and the civic sector as well. And that is best happened when the sectors are working together so that they can learn from each other. They can deploy innovations from one and the other. They can adapt. They can work together and get those things done. So those are just three primary reasons why we need to be building stronger relationships and connectivity. Now, here in Sonoma County, you know this, because in my limited exposure to you, I've seen examples of innovation, collective efforts, collaborative efforts, and I'm just going to call out two, but I'm sure that you could put all kinds of examples up on this board. One of them is the Russian River Confluence, a relatively nascent but extraordinarily ambitious effort to bring public, private, and civic sector together to better manage your watershed because there's an intense interest, love, respect, compassion, and hope for the future in the Russian River itself. Because, as Norman MacLean says, eventually everything merges into one and a river runs through it. Now, another one that I'm particularly enamored with and have used in our other work is upstream investments, another effort where private sector partnered with philanthropy to figure out ways to drive change in the civic sector, service delivery, especially in social services, and then to migrate that into public spending. And you can see that that kind of collaboration would not have happened, that kind of innovation would not have happened without that kind of collaboration. Now I want to touch on one other trinity, if you will, that I think is very important to our collective effort. And that is that we've got to really adhere to a triple bottom line. Many of you, I think, in this room are aware of, cognizant of, the limitations of unrestrained capitalism, just as we are the limitations of unrestrained socialism or unrestrained environmentalism. And it's really about coming up with a framework where we're accounting for all three, and that we're advancing solutions that simultaneously move forward people, planet, and profit. This is not a new idea, but we've got a long way to go to be deploying this in the key decisions we're making in all three sectors, and especially when we're working together. I think it's particularly important even in our own lives. I know that we think about this in my family and in our family business because we think it as a focusing way around our decisions as stewards for our family, for our business, for our community, our region, and as we've been talking today, for your future. What do you want that to be, and how are you going to account it according to a triple bottom line? The triple bottom line is part of the DNA of the California Economic Summit. In fact, if you go to the Economic Summit website, /endorse, you can see the principles for the California Economic Summit. You can go there and you can endorse them because the hundreds and thousands of people who have been involved in this over the last 7 years recognize that this is where we need to begin, that this isn't about growing profits. It isn't just about having a climate-free, a carbon-free climate. It is about bringing them together and advancing all three. It's also embedded then in what we refer to as the Roadmap for Shared Prosperity. The 2017 summit in San Diego brought hundreds of people together in where they informed and then committed to specific actions they wanted to pursue in 2018 to pursue a set of things that was necessary for shared prosperity. Those things are memorialized in the 2018 Roadmap for Shared Prosperity, which was released yesterday and is also available at caeconomy.org. And the major elements are what we refer to as our 1 million challenges. We know we need to grow the housing stock by more than 1 million in California. What are we going to do in order to do that? We need to grow our skilled workforce by more than 1 million, and we're making progress at the state level and working with regions to build the CTE workforce pipeline. And we need more than 1 million acre feet every year for a decade in order to bring the state water into balance. And we need to do that primarily through regional resiliency and watershed management and integrity. And the Russian River stakeholders have been key to our efforts in the summit to do that. We've also incorporated into the roadmap metrics and targets for restoring upward mobility and economic security. It truly does have to be a priority given where we are. We're connecting urban and rural California to each other. And finally, there's a dedicated stream of work here in Sonoma County as well as in the other North Bay counties to be documenting how you are recovering, what would have enabled you to respond faster, what would build resilience into our communities, not just from disasters, but from economic dislocations and other things that can impact the triple bottom line. And by November, when we come together for the summit here in Santa Rosa and in other places within Sonoma County, we'll have proposals developed for consideration here and by other regions about how we move that forward into state policy. So we've got a lot of work to do. You're well on the way. You're doing some wonderful things, and we're going to hear from some of those perspectives now. So Beth?
So when we were in the hallway, the panelists, we were deciding if we should sit or stand for this part of the presentation, and we decided on sitting. But as I'm here, I realize my feet don't touch the ground. and it's hard, as my niece would say, to do serious adulting when you're like this. So I'm going to stand up.
There you go.
On December 4th, I received a voicemail message, and it was this. Hey, Beth, it's Vanessa. Call me ASAP. I need to talk to you about the wildfires. Well, that topic was not unusual. It's all we'd all been talking about for 2 months. But Vanessa was Vanessa Bechtel, the CEO of the Ventura Community Foundation. When I reached her, she said, "We've just been hit by these wildfires. You're 2 months ahead of me. Tell me everything you know." And just like that, student becomes teacher. And something I knew nothing about 2 months prior, I was in a position to pay forward. So I thought with my 5 minutes today, I'd share with you the 5 lessons about disaster philanthropy that I'd shared with Vanessa that day. Lesson 1, take the long view. Remember those early days? Each day was like a dog year. It was really hard to see beyond the urgency. There was so much need right in front of us. But as my team at the Community Foundation Sonoma County reached out to other communities and foundations across the country who had experienced other disasters, some which were referenced in our presentation this morning, like Katrina or 9/11, or what seemed like countless hurricanes, we kept hearing the advice: you're going to be in this for the long haul. Expect at least 5 to 10 years. If you can, in your fundraising efforts, set up something that can be there for the mid to long term. You're going to need some sustained philanthropic dollars. So we set up the Sonoma County Resilience Fund with that in mind for mid to long-term recovery. So far, we've raised close to $11 million, and we're working on our grant-making strategy to make our first round of grants later this year. Lesson 2, expect extreme devastation and extreme generosity. When I gathered my team that first day, we set what I thought was a reach goal to raise $1 million. We did that in 2 days. It wasn't because of us. It was that we underestimated the amount of generosity. We knew that here in Sonoma County we'd be generous, but what we didn't expect was that over 70% of our contributions would come from outside our community, from around the region and around the country. The tech industry stepped up, of course, the wine industry, the restaurant industry. And it wasn't just us. We're so lucky here to have the leadership of Brett Martinez and his team, who raised over $30 million for immediate relief. We're also fortunate to have the leadership of Daniel Lurie and the Tipping Point community, who raised millions of dollars on our behalf and did so by so boldly throwing 2 huge concerts. So collectively, we have tens of millions of dollars of philanthropic money, which is a lot, but our problems are in the billions. So we have a big responsibility to figure out how to invest really strategically. Lesson 3, support your second responders. Soon after the emergency workers had left the scene, our nonprofit sector, the second responders, stepped in to provide direct programs and services, shelter, food, basic needs. These are organizations that were already stretched, doing their main missions, and now they've taken on fire recovery work and programming as well. So it's our responsibility as we move forward to support not just the fire recovery work they're doing, but were their day jobs and their missions prior to the fires. Lesson 4, watch out for a tale of two. Unfortunately, in both our community and in our country, we are divided, a place of inequity. We know this locally. We have the data from the study we did, A Portrait of Sonoma, a few years ago. We know that sadly, sometimes your zip code can be more determinant of the quality of your life than your genetic code. In disaster situations, this contrast becomes even sharper. So we have a responsibility to pay more attention to the more vulnerable and to bring more resources to those communities, including low-income seniors and kids, communities of color, our new immigrant population. We're really lucky to have UndocuFund sprung up in their leadership to support the fire recovery. My final lesson, lesson 5, is a little bit more of a personal one, which is take a breath and a nap. Around that 2-month mark when I was talking to Vanessa, I had been noticing that every meeting I was in was filled with energy, but it was the energy of adrenaline and caffeine. It was not that kind of sustained energy you need for a marathon pace. One of my favorite executive directors said that everyone on her team had gained the Fire 5. I too remembered that I should re-examine and reestablish my relationship with salads. We know we have to be our own sustainable resources, and I know each one of you has been digging deep and contributing so much for the past few months. So one hope I have for you for your weekend is that you'll do something to take care of yourself, even as we do such a great job of continuing to take care of one another. Thank you.
I don't have the same problem, but if I did, I would have stood too. I am required to stand because of who I am and the position I have within my own tribe. So, with that being said, Hen Maya Iwa, Toshishki Mayemta, Reno County Franklin, Chairman Kashaya Pomo Tribe. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about the power of partnerships. And especially because we're all Sonoma County people, and as Sonoma County's first people, I think that we bring a different perspective and what these partnerships can bring to the table and the results that we can have from them afterwards. A little bit about who Kashaya is. If you all have been to Sea Ranch or to Fort Ross, welcome to Kashaya's territories. We are on the coast in Sonoma here. And archaeologically, we can prove our existence on that coast for 12,500 years. We believe that we first walked onto the earth at our village of Danaka right there at Stewart's Point. So we go back in our way a lot longer than 12,500, but I think we pretty much got the deal sealed as far as who was here first. The county of Sonoma and the Kashaya Pomo tribe have partnered for longer than 100 years. There's a last mass hanging in Sonoma County happened at a place called Plantation right on the coast. And 3 Kashaya men were hung for the reason of being Indian in public. And when the telegraph went to the sheriff of Sonoma County, the sheriff actually asked them to wait. I've always thought about that, and I think about our buddy Rob Giordano and what a great man he is and what a good job he's done for all of us. Thank you. We don't hear his name thrown out there because these guys were all so awesome and shining. It takes a lot of the spotlight, but we got to remember that Rob did that too. And the county sheriff still does that for my tribe to this day. We talk about partnerships. What do partnerships with tribes look like? Let's talk about keeping our beaches open. You guys remember last year the state tried to close our beaches and charge us money to go in and access them. And Kashaya stepped in and said, hey, wait a minute. Those are our beaches. They've been our beaches since time immemorial, and we want to keep them free because we've always kept them free for everybody. And we own coastal land, and we're inviting people to come out to our property now. We're not charging them. So why would we support something like that? Thankfully, that's gone. Doesn't exist anymore. And then we're talking about the Russian River. James has done a great job of pushing this Russian River Alliance together. And in doing that, has united a number of tribes as well. So we're talk about the environmental aspect of the partnerships between tribes and the county. It's a beautiful thing. If done right, it's a beautiful thing. Did you know that at Stewart's Point, Kashaya has the very first Indian school in the state of California, right there on our reservation. And when that burned down, do you know who stepped in to help us with education funds? Yep, County of Sonoma. Still a county school. Lots of Indian kids going to it. I love our kids. And lots of non-Indian kids that have gone through there as well, and we love them all. And they all learn our language, and they all learn something about our ceremonies. It's how we pass these things forward. I think that probably the most beautiful collaboration between any government and a tribe can be the restoration of land, the righting of wrongs done in the past, and that certainly was done with the Kashaya Coastal Reserve. And this is a property that we worked with, not just the county, but with the state and a number of private foundations as well, and restored coastal land ownership to the Kashaya Pomo tribe. That 12,500 years that we've been on that coast, the last 150 of it, we've had to ask other people for permission to go, until now. And the restoration of that is the most beautiful thing that the county has ever done for tribes. And we're very appreciative. And all of you at this table here and a lot of you out there had something to do for that. So we thank you, and every chance I get, I like to put that forward and make sure that everybody knows how appreciative the tribe is of such a beautiful action. So we have all these different ways that we partner together. And then the fires hit. And then it's well, I can't say it, but Jimmy can. the OS and then little squiggly lines afterwards moment that we all had in October when all of a sudden these fires hit. And that felt to me, as a tribal chairman with 1,000 tribal members, it felt an awful lot like I was on a boat and you could hear it creaking and the winds and the ocean was strong and rocking it back and forth and it's starting to leak. And then your brothers and your sisters come and your partners come. And oh my God, Sonoma County at that point, we weren't black, we weren't white, we weren't Indian, we weren't Hispanic. We were Sonoma County residents all looking to each other for help, all helping each other, irregardless of where you came from. Thank you. And I think that is the key to these partnerships. And when you all are thinking of partnerships, whether it's economic development or housing, I really want you to think and be in the mindset of, who are your partners? Where are these partners coming from? Amazing local push and leadership coming from Redwood Credit Union. Amazing leadership coming from our county. Where's the city of Santa Rosa, the mayor? Wow. And tribes. Don't forget that when you think of partnering and you think of the power of these partnerships, build those relationships now. Because when you know what hits the fan, if I don't have a good relationship with my brothers and sisters from the county government, I'm out of that loop. And when that fire hit, and the Kashaya-Pomo tribe was the only one at the moment that could service Indians, not just Kashaya Indians, but Indians from 23 different tribes when it was all said and done. More than 3,000 people that came through our tribal offices that we were able to help with the assistance of other tribes like Lytton and of the folks in the county and of the amazing Mrs. Gore, which I'm waiting for the TV series. It's going to happen, I hear. But so that happens, if those partnerships don't exist, this doesn't happen. I can't take care of my tribal members. I look today and I'm kind of looking back and I'm thinking about Amber Idica and Sammy Pueo, Cordova family, and people that I love and grew up with who had lost their homes, in Coffee Park and Larkfield. And I think about the response from the city of Santa Rosa and the ability for me to know that we have a good mayor in the city of Santa Rosa. By the way, I grew up on Orchard Street, Santa Rosa High School. Go Panthers. So in closing, I have a couple of statements that I want to make. And first of all, again, stress the importance of the partnerships with tribes, with your First Nations peoples, and with each other. And speaking of those partnerships, I get to do this little jab because I'm a little ticked off that I got furloughed. That's never fun. But I want to say that the Kashaya-Pomo tribe stands ready to partner with any of you, with our brothers and sisters from the county, with any of the tourism bureaus, city of Santa Rosa, to stand with you and to fight these efforts, these ill efforts to put oil rigs off of the coast of Sonoma County. I think we have an opportunity now to show the Hill, to show Washington, D.C., that the people of Sonoma, not only are we strong, fires can't stop us, floods can't stop us, and certainly these misguided efforts from Washington, D.C. to damage our coastline forever, that won't stop us either. We will beat this. We can beat that together. If we partner together, these are the kinds of things that we as individuals, as tribal leaders, county leaders, city leaders, that we can defeat. And I will close by saying in our language, Katin metujubi, Chano lolowak, moch me. Me tuyibi kanem chedu. My brothers, my sisters, it is time to pray together. It is time to talk to one another. Thank you very much. Good job.
So I'm going to follow suit, and I'm going to stand. So I've been asked to talk about a couple topics today. Over the past 4 months, I've had a lot of people asking me how Redwood Credit Union was able to do some of the things we've been able to do for our members, employees, and communities. And one of the things that people are unaware of is at 1:30 in the morning on that Monday morning, we went into full disaster mode. Our main facility where our data center is, right there on Cleveland Avenue, the fire was coming towards that facility. We lost all power, we lost all phone lines, we were on backup generator. The building in that area was evacuated, we didn't have access to it. We had 150 employees spread all over Northern California because they were evacuated. And we have about 300,000 members, and in the 4-county area, we had several thousand members that were highly impacted and needed our services. The good news is our disaster plan that we work on a regular basis and practice on a regular basis worked perfectly. Our services never stopped. We had to go to our backup disaster center in Sacramento. And that I'm a big fan of disaster plans. I'm a huge fan today because it really saved the credit union and our ability to help our community. On Monday afternoon, I started getting phone calls asking us to turn up our community fund. And we had a lot of experience in the Napa earthquakes and quite a bit of experience up in Lake County in the 2 largest fires in our partnership with the Press Democrat and Senator McGuire. And the difference was we weren't in full disaster mode as a company at that time, so this was a huge, huge decision. The fact that we had the plan and the fact that I had confidence it was working and I had confidence in it because we had practiced it gave me the ability to feel comfortable. I knew it was going to be a big deal. I didn't know it was going to be this big of a deal, but it gave me the confidence to be able to say yes, and we were able to roll that fund out on the very next day on Tuesday. Wednesday of this week, our fund hit $32 million from over over 41,000 people and groups from 23 different countries. Over 70% of those dollars were from outside of the 4-county area, and this was a 4-county effort. It wasn't just Sonoma County. And each county has completely different issues and needs based on the disaster. Our fund is a very specific fund. It's not designed for the medium and long-term needs. It's designed specifically to help those people who lost homes and had economic impact during the disaster. And as of today, we will be cutting the final checks, and through the weekend, by Monday, all 32 million of those dollars will be dispersed to those people that needed those funds. So we will be in the process of shutting down that fund and really starting to focus on medium and the longer term issues from the credit union's perspective. But the reality is when you're receiving money from all over the world, how do you shut it down? So we're creating a process where we will link in each county based on the needs of that county any funds that come in after we shut it down to more of a medium term recovery efforts. And then again, as our organization will focus on that at the same time. I'm very proud of what we've accomplished, but I wanted to take this opportunity. I know many of you in the room supported our efforts, and it's been a crazy 4 months, and I appreciate your support. Ben talked a little bit about Strategic Sonoma. I'm not going to repeat what he said, but Pam and I and our committee were working on a 5-year strategic plan, and then the fires hit. And luckily, we were able to take a step back, and the Board of Supervisors gave us some additional funding, and we hired these consultants, strategy consultants that we had been working with who really know Sonoma County at this point in time to go study other disasters and what worked and what didn't work. And they are, we're getting ready to roll out a short-term economic recovery plan, and then we'll jump back to the 5-year strategy and wrap that up. On day 2 of the fire, I hired a consultant for the credit union to go out and study different disasters and the impacts on credit unions and what they did to help their members and what they did to help their communities. And so the learnings from other disasters I find very valuable. There's all kinds of things to learn, and we really focused on those ones that recovered well. And I want to talk about just a few things. There's a lot of learnings, but a few I just want to comment on. First of all, speed of recovery is very, very important. And you can't recover fast if you're not working as a team. It's been talked about here a little bit, partnerships. This is not government's responsibility. This is government, business, nonprofit, and our community as a whole. We need to be working as a team. We need to be rowing in the same direction. And we need to be focused on what the goal is. The goal is rebuilding the community. The goal is helping those people that have been impacted. It's not about us individually. When there's a roadblock, there's going to be roadblocks. Don't stop and stare at it. You go around it, you go over it, but don't stop and stare at it. One of the things that we've talked about in this community a lot that is more important today than ever is doing business locally. And in a disaster situation, doing business locally is a very important part of recovery. And small businesses are struggling here, and small businesses struggle in a disaster situation. These small businesses, many of them have been struggling since the first day of the fire, but they've had savings and that type of stuff. They are running out of runway right now. We know that because we've surveyed them and we've been talking to them. The quickest way that we can help these people and help ourselves and help our community is to really, as businesses and as community members, to remember the power that the buying locally has. It's something that can change things tomorrow. So I have complete confidence in our ability to do this. And one of the reasons is I look around this room, I look up here on stage, the leaders in this community, there's many of us are in the room today. And I have confidence in, because we have a history of working together, I have confidence in our ability to do this. We're all in this together. And thank you for having me.
I'm going to stand just because I love to stand. And because somehow I don't understand who these chairs were created for, but definitely not for a 5'3.5" person. Good morning. My name is Ana Lugo, and I am the board president of the Norway Organizing Project, one of the founding organizations of UndocuFund. I want to start by thanking Supervisor Gore for inviting me to speak this morning. I am very aware of the huge opportunity that this is. I must take a moment to acknowledge the responsibility I feel toward our communities in Sonoma County, who, just like in our nation, have been rendered voiceless. And the giants whose shoulders I am standing on. They who have fought and dared greatly so that I can have a voice and the opportunity to stand on stage this morning. I am a young brown woman, and I am proud of it. A young brown woman with a vision where all people deserve housing, regardless of their income or life circumstances. Where every child has access to the best education, regardless of the color of their skin, the language spoken at home, or their parents' income. A vision where each and every one of us have the opportunity to pursue our dreams. I invite you to dream up a world where this vision is a reality. Now, I invite you to acknowledge how far we are from it. The divide that exists in our nation and in our communities. Yes, let us be honest with each other. We are divided by artificial determinants created long before us. Things like class, race, gender, sexual orientation. We are a microcosm of our larger society, and we cannot change until we acknowledge that. And we have the opportunity to dare greatly and change that. I know we can. Because for the first time in my years working in this community, when the fires were burning, we all came together. If someone dropped the ball on something, the rest of us picked it up. No criticisms, no questions asked. We came together to ensure that everyone in our community had what they needed. Yes, there are many lessons to be learned, and many improvements to be made. Divisions to be united. But I saw a glimpse of what we have the capacity to do as a community. The fires were equal opportunity destroyers. They did not care for class, race, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, age. And it is our responsibility now to ensure that our systems and structures do not discriminate either. I needed that break. One of the giants on whose shoulders I stand, Frances Perkins, was the first woman in the nation to serve in a presidential cabinet as the Secretary of Labor in 1933. She was America's leading advocate for industrial safety and workers' rights. Frances, who grew up in a conservative Republican home, understood her responsibility to ensuring that workers had safe working conditions. She understood this because on a fateful day, she witnessed workers, mostly young women, jump from the 8th floor to their deaths during the 1911 Triangle Factory fire. We too witnessed our neighbors running from the fires. We witness every day our community members suffer from homelessness, our families being displaced, our children going hungry, our immigrant families being terrorized. So I ask you, what is our collective responsibility as we see our most vulnerable suffer? Privilege is power, and power is nothing more than the responsibility to advocate on behalf of those who do not have it, to treat everyone with dignity and to respect them just like we like to be treated and respected. Here we are, a room filled with some of the most privileged and powerful people in our county. So I ask you again, what is our collective responsibility to the rest of our community? Will we allow greed to dictate the future of our county? Or will we stand and stop the silence which oppresses so many of us? As Frances Perkins once said, the people are what matter to government, and government should aim to give all people under its jurisdiction the best possible life. Woo! The fires tested our character as a community. And if only for a few days, we surpassed the artificial divisions of our society and supported each other. We showed love to one another. Through our solidarity, we set an example not only for our nation, but for the world. We now have the opportunity, and dare I say, the responsibility to be an example of what an equitable and just recovery can look like. I have the audacity to believe that together we can change our community, our nation, and the world. But we must ask ourselves, are we willing to dare greatly and stand up for one another? As President Obama said, our stories are singular, but our destinies are shared. Don't forget, our shared community is only shared if we remember the people we share it with. I can tell you this, if and when they come for you, I will stand with you. And I ask you this, if and when they come for me, will you stand with me?
So as you've just demonstrated, this group needs no moderation. You need no moderation. You know what to do. You are the leaders you've been waiting for. This is about turning opportunity into responsibility. It is about building and honoring and building on inclusion and diversity. That's not just a civil rights agenda. That is a resiliency agenda. You can do it. The California Forward and the Economic Summit will partner with you throughout this year to do this. Thank you very, very much for your work. Thank you.